All right, I think we're going to get going, and I know people will continue to join us as the morning moves along. My name is Tracy Laliberty, and I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare, or CASCW as we refer to ourselves, and we're located at the University of Minnesota. And it is my privilege to welcome you today to our 23rd Annual Child Welfare Conference. I would like to start by first acknowledging that our university and the land that we are located on is the unceded, traditional, ancestral, and contemporary land of the Dakota people, who are the first people of Minnesota Makoche. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm tribal sovereignty and work to hold the university, ourselves, our learners, and our partners accountable to Native American peoples and nations. We also acknowledge slavery's deep roots and recognize the significant role that captive and free African Americans have played in building our country, the United States of today. The work of the center is focused squarely on supporting, educating, and enhancing the child welfare workforce, and thus is dedicated to increasing the knowledge base of professionals. One way that we do this is to continue to examine issues that challenge the child welfare workforce as we evolve and continue to learn in our practice. We do this as the workforce strives to provide competent and effective services. And today we will engage with one another to better support collaborative relationships between birth and foster parents in child welfare. Today's conference is made possible by federal Title IV funds that come to us through the Minnesota Department of Human Services and by support of the College of Education and Human Development and the School of Social Work here at the University of Minnesota. So we want to acknowledge and thank those sources. In addition to today's conference, we are finalizing a new issue of CW 360, and I think you'll hear more about that later in the conference. The title is the same as our conference, Supporting Collaboration in Birth and Foster Parent Relationships. CW 360 is a publication that has over 24 articles reviewing research, practice, and policy related to understanding and implementing interventions where child welfare professionals can support and foster collaborative relationships and intersecting relationships between birth parents and substitute care providers when children are living in out-of-home care. As a conference attendee, you will receive an electronic copy of the CW 360 publication later this spring. And should you want a hard copy, we will have plenty of those available, and you can access that, request those on our website. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that in conjunction or in relationship with our conference every year, the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare recognizes the amazing work of professionals in the field, and we give several awards. Those awards include our Child Welfare Leadership Award, the Minnesota Child Welfare Exemplary Service Award, the Child Welfare Changemaker Award, and Outstanding Service Partner Award. We also extend an award every fall. That is the Esther Wattenberg Policy Award. You can read about these award recipients and the awards during our breaks. There's going to be a PowerPoint slide that walks you through those. You can also look at that on our website. We will be celebrating the outstanding achievements of awardees at a breakfast later this month. And I'd like to take just a moment and congratulate the awardees, who include Joanna Woolman, Rena Moran, Andrea Brubaker, Michelle Chalmers, Kaylo Brooks, and Angela Obermiller. We are so appreciative and thankful for the work that you do. The topic for today's conference, Supporting Collaboration in Birth and Foster Parent Relationships, is actually one that we have been talking about for a number of years at the center, in recognizing a lot of work that's being done across the country and specifically here in Minnesota. We selected the topic both to learn what is known, what has been learned about the crucial relationship building, as well as to support and frankly, to push the field in general to expand our work in this area. We have much to learn from parents and caregivers with lived experience, and I am so glad that we have the opportunity at today's conference and again tomorrow to learn from these amazing folks. What I have learned in my many years in child welfare is that we have to come together to utilize the opportunities we have, such as this one, and engage in real dialogue. We have to hold ourselves accountable and do so for the betterment of our service provision to children and families. It is my deepest hope that today's conference affords you the opportunity to either start or continue those dialogues today. You may be interested to know that there are 832 people registered for today's conference from more than 33 states, several countries, and the District of Columbia. We are especially pleased to have participants from a multitude of disciplines and lived experience engage in the conference today. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Jamie Sorensen, the Director at Minnesota Department of Human Services Child Safety and Permanency Division. Jamie and his team have been long time colleagues and collaborators with the folks here at the University of Minnesota and specifically the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare. We're thrilled to have you here, Jamie.
Well, good morning. Thanks, Dr. Lullaberde, and very happy to be here again. My name is Jamie Sorensen, and my pronouns are he, him. And welcome to the University of Minnesota CASCW Spring Conference on Birth and Foster Parent Relationships and Child Welfare, everyone. It's an honor today to be with county and tribal child welfare workers and supervisors, care and service providers, youth, and those with lived child welfare experience, advocates, academics, and others who commit their time and energy to investing in future generations. On a more personal note, I want to acknowledge and offer my condolences for the loss of loved ones and other losses that you may have experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that some days it's a great act of courage to just show up and present yourself to the world, and I'm so thankful for your courage today, and I'm very happy to be in this space with you. So my most sincere welcome to you all. My team and I at the Minnesota Department of Human Services continue to work hard every day in our efforts to improve the policies, resources, environment, and landscape within which we ask you to do the very hard work of attending to the safety and well-being of Minnesota's most vulnerable children and families. Whether it's advancing Family First Preservation Services Act, driving equity for all children and families, ensuring an environment of collaborative safety rather than blame, developing and advancing legislative proposals, fighting to protect the Indian Child Welfare Act, striving for an improved electronic case management system and reducing paperwork, advocating for child welfare workforce immunity in the provision of public child welfare services. We have you and Minnesotans that we are committed to at front and center all times. Much of our work may not always be visible to you, but it is ever present, and our commitment to you is untiring. We have all been in an extended period of increased demands and unique challenges in our efforts to connect with families and navigate the distress of COVID exposure and transmission. These professional demands, challenging workplace climates, and exposures to trauma require us to attend to our professional self-care more than ever. You are all vital to building safe and healthy families and communities throughout Minnesota. In your daily work, we ask you to make big decisions, and sometimes based on incomplete and imperfect information. Because of all of these challenges and the complexities we're navigating these days, I think it's helpful to sometimes go back to the basics of what brings us to this work. A renewal of our passion for children and families, an emphasis on clear communication, working to be an attentive and good listener, a focus on being a good team player, lifting up empathy as a primary lens through which we view our work, and setting clear personal and professional boundaries. When it all feels like too much, you may find solutions in going back to these core basic principles of our work. And also, if you ever feel tired, alone or unloved in this important work, please remember that your contribution is unique and necessary. Thank you, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Lilliberte.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We really appreciate having you involved today, and really extend to everybody across the country that the presentations and the content that we're going to be talking about are nationally applicable and are things that we do want everyone to be paying attention to and engage in dialogue around. Before we begin the program, I do want to thank Stacy Gehring, who you're going to hear from in a moment, Denise Cooper, Crystal Fernandez, Nora Lee, and Karen Sheehan, our outreach team here at CASCW, for their hard work and contributions to the 2022 CW 360, as well as the creation and implementation of this conference. It is a lot of work, and we appreciate all of what you do. And now I'd like to introduce Stacy, who's going to cover some logistics for the day, and then we'll get going with our first speakers.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Gehringer, the Director of Outreach at CASCW. We're really excited for our conference lineup today and tomorrow. We're just going to get these logistics out of the way and get started with our keynotes. So CEUs will be emailed out to all attendees within a week. This conference is being recorded. Presenter PowerPoint slides will be available if they've provided them, and we'll post those on the CASCW conference website. Different types of virtual gatherings allow for different types of participation. And because we had over 800 registrants for today's conference, we cannot host an open chat, but we really encourage your participation in many other ways. So please submit questions using the Q&A function. We'll provide the presenter's contact information as well as CASCW's contact. Engage via social media, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'll put the hashtag in the chat. And then finally, the Q&A, most of our sessions have built-in time for Q&A. I'll let you know if we're going to have time. Please do use that function, and the questions will be addressed at the end of each session. We might have limited time for questions, but we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. And then all presenters have shared their contact information. If for any reason there's far too many questions, we are open to creating a Google Doc parking lot where we can put the questions and get them answered for you all to see. All right, that's enough with the logistics. I'm so excited to introduce to you our first presenter today, Shronda Selvanoff and Katie Byron. These two are national child and family well-being advocates. Shronda is a kinship caregiver and child welfare system impacted parent, and Katie is a resource caregiver and adoptive parent. This session will leave you pondering, what is my why? By sharing their stories of transformation with you, Katie and Shronda will make you laugh, cry, and most importantly, learn and grow. We welcome you, Katie and Shronda.
Good morning. We are so delighted to be here today, sharing pieces of our lives, our stories with you. And we're just going to take a very short moment and just share a little bit about who we are, and then I'm going to turn it over to Katie. But as Stacy explained there, I am a kinship caregiver. I'm also an impacted child welfare parent. I've gone through the system myself. My 9-to-5 is doing some work in public policy, really wanting to disrupt the harms of child welfare. And Katie, what do you do?
All right, thank you, Shronda. So as Stacy said, I'm a former resource caregiver and adoptive parent here in Washington State. And my 9-to-5 is actually, I'm the program manager for a program that actually helps bring parents and caregivers, parents whose children are placed in out-of-home care, and those who are caring for the children, both licensed foster parents and relative caregivers, together to build these partnerships that we're going to talk about today and throughout the next 2 days, actually, for this conference. And so really offering the intentional support for those partnerships.
Thanks, Katie. All right, you gonna break them off something here?
All right, I'm going to kick you all off with a little bit
Okay.
about my story, and we are going to have some time for questions and answers at the end. So if you want to pop those in the Q&A, Stacy will be putting those together, and we will be happy to answer as many as we can for you. And so a little bit about my story. How did I come to sitting here today? So my story starts about 17 years ago, and my husband and I wanted to adopt a baby. And we went through the foster parent classes because that was something that was required of us. But I can tell you at that time, I was absolutely unprepared, unknowledgeable, and scared to partner with parents in any capacity. I understood a little bit about the power of open adoption and how open adoption is better for kids and particularly adoptees also as they go through life. But I did not understand the purpose of foster care. I did not understand that foster care was about reunification, about walking alongside a family so that they could become whole again. And so my husband and I, we actually, we sat empty. Our home sat empty for 18 months while we waited for a placement. And looking back, that is one of my biggest life regrets, is that I had these 18 months when I could have come alongside a partner or a family, could have partnered with a family, could have supported a family, but I was too scared. I was too caught in my own fear to even take that step forward. And so after these 18 months, we ended up getting matched with a mom, an expectant mom out in Ohio. And we flew out there to meet her. And on my journey out there, I was filled with biases and assumptions, and I thought I knew. And it turns out that my daughter is part of a large sibling set, and I thought I had a good idea of what would bring a family into the system such that multiple children had been either removed and placed in other homes. And I walked in and I met this mom, and it was a life-changing stopping moment for me, because what I saw there was a woman who was hurting, and this woman was hurting at the core of her soul. And it was a moment that I realized that my family's greatest celebration, that my family's greatest passion, that I was becoming a parent, I was going to be a mom. That is something I had desired my whole life. I realized at that moment that this was going to come from another family's greatest loss. And sitting with that and recognizing that and realizing that was a huge turning point for me. And so as I sat with this mom and I heard a little bit about her story, and she shared with me the other children that she had parented and then had been removed and placed into other homes, and that she didn't know where her children were or how they were doing, which is why she had made an adoption plan for this baby, because she told me she at least wanted to know who was going to be caring for this baby. And she implored me to make sure that this little one knew that she was loved, that her mom loved her. And as we sat there, she told me that one of her greatest regrets was that her mom was not going to be able to meet this baby. Her mom was too sick to come to the hospital to meet the baby. And she knew we were going to be returning to our home state of Washington with this baby. And in that moment, I had the opportunity to transform. I could either sit there and say, yeah, that's too bad. I'm sorry your mom's not going to meet this baby. Our agreement was letters and pictures once a year. Or I could reach out and see this woman and the family as individuals who loved this child just as much as I did, and kind of took a leap of faith. And I looked at her and I said, would you like us to bring the baby to see your mom? And she was like, you would do that? You would come to my home? And I said, yeah, this is, I'm learning in these moments that this is just as important for this child to know this family as it is to know this family. And so we walked into their home. We handed grandma her baby. And again, I had been told on this journey, like, you are an angel. This child will be so lucky to have you. This will be such a wonderful thing for your family. That's what I had been told. That's what society told me. So that was the mindset I had. And while that was all true to an extent, I'm not an angel, I'm not a saint, I'm just a person. What I realized when I sat on their couch and watched this grandma hold this baby, after realizing there had been multiple babies that she had held and that had been removed and that she was no longer able to hug anymore, that again, my family's greatest joy was coming from a tremendous loss that was experienced by this family. And she sat there and sobbed for the whole 45 minutes. She sat there and held that baby and just sobbed. And it was really another eye-opening moment for me. She wasn't happy for my family. She was happy that we seemed like great people and that we were willing to bring the baby to see her, but she was grieving. She was grieving at her very soul. And I needed to recognize that foster care and adoption comes with a tremendous amount of grief. There is absolutely joy there too, but these are families that are really hurting. And that really changed my entire path. So fast forward, brought the baby home, and I became very motivated to build a relationship with this family, build a relationship for this little girl that I loved so much. And so I stayed in connection with her mom, and that grandma who sat there holding that baby sobbing. I will forever be grateful that I was willing to step outside my comfort zone and meet her, because she did. She passed away a month later. And so those pictures of my daughter with her grandma are the only ones that exist. And had I been too scared to step forward in that moment, then she wouldn't have those. And so we ended up giving birth to 2 other kids, and then decided to get relicensed for foster care. And this time I went in with a completely different purpose. I did not want to grow my family. I wanted to be the support, to be the connection that I think could have made a tremendous difference in the story of my daughter's family. And so I went in, we got licensed, my husband and I, and we said, we do not want to be an adoptive home. We don't want to do any of that. I want to be there to help reunite a child with their parents. And we had a little baby placed with us. And I remember telling the social worker, it had been a couple weeks since he had seen his mama. And I was like, you know what? He needs to see his mama. I'm going to press upon you. I know there's policy that he needs to see his mama. And I know this social worker was probably very busy. She had a lot on her plate. And she was like, you know what? If this is something that is so important to you, I have also got his biological uncle who is blowing up my phone over here. And if this is so important to you, the 2 of you can get together and figure this out. And so here is his number. Go call this uncle and go forth. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not what I meant. I meant you facilitate a visit with his mom. And I really had another transformational moment where I was like, am I going to do what I say I'm going to do? And so I called up this uncle, and I will tell you, this was a very frightening moment for me. I had no idea what I was getting into. And we arranged to meet at the Starbucks and Target, because here in Washington State, there is a Starbucks on every corner and in every store. And so of course there was one at Target. And walking in, I remember I was going to go meet this uncle and this little baby's mom. And I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old hanging off my cart. And then I had 2 baby car seats in the cart. And I remember thinking, this is either the smartest thing I've ever done or the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I was like, here we go. And so I pushed my cart into Target, and I met this uncle who fell apart the instant he saw his little nephew. I met this mama and handed her her baby, and saw the absolute love and just heartache at being separated from her baby. And that just really started a journey of building extended family, of really partnering together with this family and other families of children I've cared for to really build this extended family. And today, I'm still in contact with so many of these people for a multitude of reasons. We ended up adopting that little baby, but his mom co-parents with us. He calls us both mom. He's not confused. He just has two moms. And he has his Uncle Rob, but all my kids think of that as Uncle Rob. He's not just Grayson's uncle, he's everybody's fun uncle. And so really my journey took me from being scared and unsure and unwilling to step outside of my box to a place where I'm redefining family, and that our family may look really confusing on paper. If you were to draw a family tree, it's all over the place and doesn't make any sense. But to my family, all they see is a whole bunch of people that love them and an inclusive family of all their important people in their lives. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to my good friend and colleague, Sharonda. Sharonda, can you tell us a little bit about why you're sitting here today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Katie. I appreciate all that you just shared here. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the Center of Advanced Studies in Childwell for bringing us here together today and for the invitation that I've received to share with you. I want to start off by just telling you that I'm a disruptor. It is my life, work, and passion to heal wounds. As we as people, we are not broken, we are hurting. In my family, I want to disrupt the legacy of child abandonment. That is really a big wound in my family. In the child welfare system, I want to disrupt the system in its current infrastructure. I want to tell you that when we are brave and bold is when we change the world. There's a quote from Socrates, and it says, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but building the new." Here is my new. I'm going to talk to you about a new way of supporting kinship caregivers and why we should shift our mental model of what it means to be a foster parent and how to do it. Here is my why. That was my beautiful grandson. Sometimes we can be so focused on our own self-interest that we forget that our interests should be each other. And when we care about each other, we are carrying the interests of our children, our future, our legacy. So I ask you to consider that when you make decisions about our children, 1, does it benefit them? 2, does it benefit you? 3, does it benefit those that the child cares about? And lastly, does it benefit all that are concerned? So what if I told you that I needed something and it wasn't available, and so I created it? I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. I want you to ponder this question: where would you be without family? Think about that for a moment. Where would you be without family? We know that families are foundational. We know that they establish a positive identity. They provide us with a real sense of belonging. They help us establish our culture. They provide us with safety, a safe place to fall when the world gets bumpy and rough. If you live long enough, you know that the world gets bumpy and rough. Families are essential, and not being a part of one is painful. The other thing is I hope that we can all agree that there's not one singular definition of family. The facts are, we all have one. They all operate differently. They're personal and defining. Families assist us with our mental, emotional connection and growth. And families may not always be blood, but they are defined and created and connected by love. So now I want you to think about when you hear the word foster parent or foster family, what are the ideas that come forward when I say that? Well, for myself, what I can tell you is I think, expanding someone's family, the idea of saving children from horrible parents. I think of adoption. I think foster parents enter into child welfare at points to assist in reunifying families. I think that, we want to be there for children. We want to give children a loving home. And there are those too that want to incorporate multiple ethnicities and races and cultures into their family. What you don't normally think is a foster parent supporting a kinship caregiver. So my proposal today is going to invite you to see that we can come together with the shared goal of supporting children, which in some circumstances means that you've got to support their family. Because I have to tell you, in the system's current setup, it does not provide support with kinship in mind. So this is my story of being a kinship caregiver. My grandson was born in December, and at the time I was in Hawaii. I could hear the panic in my child's voice. And he said, "Mom, I wish you were here." I have to tell you, he was not alone. I wish I was there too. I also was panicked. I knew that my child's lifestyle was questionable. I also knew that it was not ideal to bring a child into. I have to tell you that I had some sorrow that day. The birth of a child is a celebration. But I have to tell you, we were scared. Life as I knew it was about to have a huge shakeup. I knew things were going to change profoundly. I just did not know how. So it was clear to me on the onset that my grandson was not going to be able to go home with his parents. It was for medical reasons. He was 2.5 months early. And later I would learn that his mother had another open CPS case. I can tell you, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, he remained in the NICU for 2.5 months. The day came of his discharge, and through the court process, it was determined he'd come home with me. Now, I got to tell you, I had a whole host of emotions and feelings. The first thing that happened for me was some shame. I felt like I had failed as a parent, and I hoped that this would have been different. I also hoped that this would be my son's wake-up call. I have to tell you, it wasn't. I also had a lot of fear. Fear of the unknown. I can't tell you the amount of heaping guilt that I had for the mistakes that I had made as a parent. I also had some anger. I was angry at my own child for not showing up to care for his kid, along with some grief for my son, my child, who was lost and unknown to me. I also had some resentment for being put in this position. At some point, I also experienced divided loyalties, really having to choose sides between families, between my grandson and my son. And I can tell you, if I stayed in those emotions, I would not have served me in supporting and caring for my grandson. Through the court process, my grandson's parents were allowed to stay in my home and be there with their child. His parents came to my home for a few days, but eventually, I have to tell you, they were off and running once again, and they left me to care for my grandson. I got to tell you, this was not my plan. My community rallied around me. However, I was not prepared mentally or emotionally to take on the huge responsibility of caring for him forever. I have a teenage daughter. I was working full time and I was going to full time. My circumstances did not scream, yes, let's take on a high needs newborn. I will absolutely never forget the day that I sat in the department's parking lot, sobbing, getting ready to go in them and tell them, find my grandson a home. However, my supports that day convinced me we could do this. We could care for him. And so I said yes that day, but I got to tell you, I was not convinced. And so I sought out to secure a family that would be open to maintaining a relationship with me as his grandma. And so I met Amy, Ryan, and Jane. I have to tell you that when we all came together, we were transparent about our agendas. Theirs was adoption, and mine was to maintain a connection. As a single mother and extended, they had spent time with my grandson when I went on business trips, or I had that all-nighter assignment I could not get done. I'm so glad to be done with school. They were incredible. They loved my grandson immensely. And as the weeks turned into months, a few things were happening. First of all, due to me not being incredibly overwhelmed and stressed, I was falling for my grandson. And I have to tell you, the foster family was falling for him too. And the day came, it was evident to everyone that he was going to stay with me. However, Amy, Ryan, and Jane wanted to stay in his life. I want you now to meet my grandson's new and expansive family. What they brought me was another relationship of support invested in my grandson's well-being, also in mine. I want to tell you that their investment in love for my grandson provided me with the time to process and to move to healing. I also want to say that my grandson has received the best of me. So the question, of course, is, how did this really come to be? Well, I had an idea and I went to the child placing agency asking for help. What I needed to do was identify a family that from the onset welcomed me into their family, because I had not decided that I was willing to let him go. The child placing agency person immediately let me know, hey, we don't normally do this type of parenting. And I said to him, why not? She didn't have a good answer. She said, let me reach out to someone. See, she had those relationships and knowledge of folks that might be open to such an idea. My question is, why don't we think about supporting kinship that are abruptly asked to care for their loved ones? I think that there's a myriad of reasons. Some folks might think that they have family to support them. Others might say it's their responsibility, that idea that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, which in my mind translates to they deserve what they get. And I'm not really quite sure how that idea serves children, but I'm not going to derail us. Kinship and foster parents are asked to do the same exact thing, care for children. We do not second guess that foster parents need support. And the current setup provides a whole host of supports to foster parents. And kinships are offered and receive fewer services. One consideration for you to ponder is the emergent nature of a kinship caregiver compared to the decision and the preparedness of choosing to foster, which translates to the need for support. What we know is the more support kinships receive, the more likely relatives will be able to step up and care for their family. What the research says is that children being with kin, that they will have fewer placement disruptions. They're less likely to be in the juvenile system. The child will have a better sense of well-being and fewer behavior incidences. We know that kinship caregivers play a critical role in supporting children and families. I want to tell you why it's so important for my grandson to be here with us. First of all, I want to tell you we all need familiar connections. My grandson asks me regularly, Grandma, where's my dad? Today I say I don't know. One day, I hope that the answer will be different. Every child wants to know their parents. What I get to do today is keep the door open for his mother and father to walk through. I do that for them. I do that for him. I do that for me. And I do that for you. As connections in our lifetimes do many things, but most often they provide us with a pathway to worthiness, belonging, and healing. I have learned some incredible, valuable lessons through this process. What I can tell you is without the support of Amy and Ryan, I don't know if I could have arrived that I could do this. I know that my grandson needed to stay with his family, and his family needed him to stay with us. I've also learned that being open and willing to let things happen without a determined destination will gain us so much. Most importantly, each other. So Amy and Ryan's decision benefited them. Their family has been expanded. We've brought culture and community to them. They have an African-American child that they've adopted. And so their community has been expanded by being a part of our family. It's benefited me. I'm better because of my grandson. His tribe has been expanded. And I really contend that when we so love and support our children, that it benefits us all. So lastly, I have a call to action. First of all, I want to ask you to be brave and bold and to disrupt the status quo. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it cannot and should not be done. Please disrupt systems, mindsets, and habits. Reflect on the impact of structural and institutional racism. And please act accordingly and be a disruptor. I ask that you also invest in your community. Reimagine what it means to foster a family. And lastly, I will end by saying, when we support families, we are supporting children. And here are a couple of mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Shonda and Katie. We do have a few questions, and I will share them with you, and we've got about 10 minutes to get to them. So we'll try to get through them all. If folks in the audience think of more questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A. So Shonda and Katie, the first question: how did you guide your children in answering questions from others about their family throughout their life? Explaining to having two moms or adoptive and birth siblings.
I could start off with that one. Well, so my oldest daughter has 11 siblings between her birth family and the siblings she has in our family. And she has always kind of enjoyed shocking people with that. She'll be like, did you know I have what I think it's 6 brothers and 5 sisters? And they're like, you only have 3 brothers and sisters. And she's like, no, really, I do. And inevitably the friends will end up at our house and they're like, you know what Emma said at school? Emma says she has 11 brothers and sisters. And I'm like, nope, she's right. She's right. And so in that way, it's always been something I think she's been very proud of. However, I have found this to be a very challenging thing. Like, I can't find a children's book that really explains to community how children's families can look different, how, when I described our family tree, looks very complicated, how to explain that to others. And I have certainly looked. I have read children's books about adoption and foster care, and not found what I was looking for that really celebrates that family can look all sorts of different ways. And so besides teaching my children and letting them know that it's absolutely okay to talk about all of their loved ones in our home, and that they don't ever have to be worried that my feelings are going to be hurt if they're talking about mom and it's not this mom, it's the other mom. So I have been working on writing a children's book to really encompass these other types of families, so that we can really normalize that families look all kinds of different ways, and that is okay. And it doesn't have to, a child shouldn't feel that they are different or that they are wrong if their family doesn't look like the nuclear family we all kind of grew up imagining. And so we just really do a lot of open conversation in our home. And I think we as adults tend to complicate it a lot more than kids do. I want you to think about the fact that many of us have multiple aunts. So you might have an Aunt Sue and an Aunt Bridget and an Aunt Karen, but none of us are confused. Like, who are all these women in my life? And who is that woman in my life? And how do they relate to that woman? We all just kind of grew up having multiple aunties, and that's okay. And to children who are raised just knowing the love of all these different people and redefining an extended family, having 2 moms is no different to them. It may bring some feelings about to the adults, because that's not what we were brought up with. But for these kids who have 2 moms, I happen to live with this mom, but I get to see this mom all the time. And I lived with this mom first, and she answers all the questions about when I was in her tummy and stuff. That's just normal to these kids. And they don't find it to be nearly as uncomfortable as we as adults think that they might find it to be. So.
Thank you, Katie. Shonda, do you have anything to add, or should we move on?
I have nothing to add to that question. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a question preceded by a comment. So Shonda's transparency was beautiful. Is there a national support group for kinship caregivers to express all of their emotions as you have done here, Shonda?
Well, first of all, I just want to say we should have things in our community. So I appreciate national work, but I don't live in Washington, D.C. I live in Seattle, Washington. And I want to be close to people that I can connect with, that I can have relationship with. So I want us to just think community, because I think that's where we have our strongest work, is in our own backyard. So here in Washington State, there are tons of support groups. I think that if you don't have one, please be open to creating one. Once again, you know, if it doesn't exist and you see the need, then go and fill the need. As the national piece goes, you know, there are national associations. I don't do much work with them, but there are national associations that do some work supporting families. One of them off the top of my head is Generations United.
Very good. We have time for a few more questions. Shonda, this is also directed toward you. Shonda, what was the best thing your CFS or child welfare worker did to support your relationship with the foster parents?
Okay. First of all, I'm going to tell you, I don't ask people's permission to have human connection with another human being. I think that's nonsense. I think that the system itself positions itself to have an incredible amount of power, and it is up to us as people to say where that is appropriate and where that is not appropriate. The CFSW worker was fantastic. He did a fantastic job, but I got to let you know, I didn't ask him much of that. I didn't ask for much of that at all. I want to make sure before Stacy, before we get out of here, because I see this woman's question that says that she's confused, and I don't want you to walk away here confused. So Stacy, can I transition real quick?
Yep, definitely. Take it away.
All right, sorry. It says these two women were amazing. It's been a pleasure to hear from them, to hear their stories, but I'm a little confused with the setup on Sharonda's grandson. He has been legally adopted by a set of foster parents, Amy and Ryan, and Sharonda has open access to them, or is she considered a kinship parent? Just want to be sure I'm understanding. I have placement of my grandson. Initially, I was seeking a foster family. They are foster parents. I did not let him go into the system. So I maintain relationships with Ryan and Amy, not as their foster family, but as my friends. So he is not legally adopted. He will be, currently we are still in the system, and I'll be looking at our options, which will be either guardianship, more than likely guardianship, or adoption. So I just wanted to provide that for some clarification for you.
Excellent. Thanks, Shonda. Let's see. I think we have time for one or two more questions. This question is probably aimed at both of you. Do these changes need to be preceded by policy changes?
I would say they don't have to be, but it's sure a lot. Well, no, I'm actually going to say no. We can't wait. I learned this from a very wise woman named Sharonda. We can't wait for policy or legislation to catch up with us before we start really redefining the meaning of family and building these human relationships that are core to all of us. And so while we absolutely should be working on policy and legislation and agency policy, all of that, we can't wait on getting all of that changed to get the culture exactly right before we undertake this important work. And so should we be working on that? Absolutely. We should be working on it becoming part of agency culture to support these relationships. You heard me talk about a relationship that is considered kind of outside the box, where two families came together and we co-parent this little boy. You heard Sharonda talk about a relationship that's outside the box, where a foster family came alongside her family and they formed a new family to care for this child. And that kind of untraditional family, where it's not the typical path of child is removed from family, services are offered to parents for a while, eventually parental rights are terminated or relinquished, and a new family is formed through adoption. We need to start rethinking and letting folks know that this is absolutely okay to kind of redefine family. What is going to work for this family? I can tell you it made folks in the department pretty uncomfortable that we would sit next to Grayson's mom in court and just talk. Like, at this point, we had known each other for about a year and a half. We were well into building our new extended family, but that made folks really uncomfortable because they're so used to this adversarial relationship and keeping foster caregivers far away from the parents, and that should be really a siloed thing where parents are over here and the caregivers are over here and never the two shall meet. And so policy change needs to really work on this becoming the norm. So asking each family, what do you need? Asking relative caregivers, like we learned from Sharonda, what do you need to be able to successfully parent this child? Asking caregivers, you may have come into this to adopt a baby and form your own family. but babies don't come just out of nowhere. They come with a family. And so can I broaden your way of thinking? And can you think about expanding your family? Because this baby comes with parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles and cousins. And we know that in the vast majority of cases, kids and adults, adoptees, and children who are removed from their home do better when we can maintain that connection for kids. And there is such a powerful role from the social worker in validating when you see a caregiver who is going that extra mile and doing that comfort call at the very beginning of placement, or who is making an effort to really reach out to parents and include them in the child's birthday party, or include them by sending a visit journal. Calling that out can mean so much, because I can tell you as a foster parent, the deep-seated fear that I was breaking the rules every time I sent a visit notebook to my son's mom to ask her, like, how did she want me to care for her baby? I was so worried I was breaking the rules. And so the power you have to say, hey, I see you making an effort with the visit notebook. I just wanted to tell you, thank you. Thank you for building that connection with this child's mother. Thank you for doing that. And so, long story short, yes, we need to change policy. Yes, we need to change practice, but we can't wait for those to change before we start doing this essential work of prioritizing human relationships and connection.
Yeah, I'm just going to make this super short. We don't need permission to be in relationship with each other. That's nonsense. And we, as people who come into this work really wanting to support children and families, don't need a policy to say, people need connection, this works for children, this works for us, and we are going to do it.
Okay, I think that's a good note to end on. We do have more questions coming in right at the last minute, but we're going to wrap it up, as always, with Shonda's powerful words. So thank you so much, Shonda and Katie, for being here this morning. I know everybody is incredibly inspired and motivated by your presentation. As we mentioned, the contact information is on the screen. Katie and Shonda are open to anyone reaching out, and we will also provide the resources on the conference page, anything they mentioned and some of the work specifically that Katie is doing with her program. So we will now be moving on to our next presenter. Thanks again, Shonda and Katie. If we didn't get to your questions, we will create a Google Doc and see if the presenters are able to address those for you as well. All right. So next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Erica Lewis. Dr. Lewis is an assistant professor at the University of Maryland School of Social Work. Her research examines the risk and protective factors that influence family functioning and child well-being. Dr. Lewis will present findings from an external evaluation of the Quality Parenting Initiative, also known as QPI, which is an effort to promote high-quality foster care by strengthening partnerships among foster care stakeholders. And following Dr. Lewis's 30-minute presentation, Jennifer Rodriguez will join Erica to answer questions about QPI. Jennifer is a lawyer and the executive director of the Youth Law Center, a national public interest law firm. Jennifer is a co-founder of YLC's Quality QPI, Quality Parenting Initiative. Jennifer's passion for systems change is based on her own experiences growing up in foster care and decades of working with youth to involve them in leading policy change. So now we're going to hear from Erica. Her presentation is entitled, "It's Possible, Cultivating Positive Relationships Between Birth and Foster Parents." Welcome, Erica.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate you. Thanks, Crystal. All right, so if we could go to the next slide, please. Thanks. I'd love to start out with just acknowledgements and thank yous for the work that I'm going to be presenting today. So being able to work with the Youth Law Center and QPI's administrative staff and leadership has been wonderful, as well as me being able to go to QPI sites. And so I was able to go to 3 sites and site visits. And so shout out to Kate Rickford and Aspire. They were one of the places that I was able to visit during the research and collecting the data, as well as the birth and foster parents who were willing to share their time to really answer the questions that I had and just talk about their experiences. I also wanted to thank our funding support, which was Annie E. Casey. Oh, I've thanked a lot of people. It feels like it's award season now, so I feel like I should thank my manager, my agent, maybe God. I think so. Thanks. All right, we'll go to the next slide. So today we're going to be talking about 3 major topics. The first one is this idea of the importance of stakeholder relationships in foster care. Also, I'd like to spend some time describing Quality Parenting Initiative, QPI, and its impact on the birth and foster family or foster parent relationship. The last thing we're going to talk about is identifying strategies that really promote this positive working relationship across stakeholders. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take you back. Imagine 2019, the end of April, I am sitting at my first QPI national conference. And it happens to be that the subject is on building a relationship-based system. Every day of the conference, they had a word of the day. And the day that I attended, the word was relationships. So I sat in this large auditorium with small tables of 8 to 10 people, and they're talking, people are laughing, people are sharing ideas. And I came to find out through the presentations, as well as my time with the participants there, attendees, that there were stakeholders who were active, not only in the conference, but just at their foster care agency and through their system. So I'm talking birth parents, foster parents, former youth in care, providers. And there was this energy that just was palpable. And it was just folks working together and really solving problems. And it was around this idea of relationships, but I saw it in real time. So it was fascinating to me. And it felt like the takeaway message there was partnerships were important and relationships mattered. And I was intrigued to find out what it was about QPI and the way in which they implement insights that creates this type of collaboration and this energy that I couldn't quite describe, but I wanted to understand how that was. And so now I find myself here after a research study being able to answer some of that. Thank you. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to talk about foster parents as stakeholders. So, I mean, you see the numbers here on the slide. I mean, considering the most recent annual reports of the number of children who are placed in foster care, high quality foster parenting is vital. This is vital to ensuring safety, permanency, and well-being of children in care. You know, foster family homes they're considered the preferred out-of-home placement. And this is because foster families provide stable living environments where children can develop secure attachments and form trusting relationships with caregivers. And we know that these relationships are needed for children's social, emotional, and behavioral development. The previous studies have found nurturing and positive caregiving relationships to be associated with decreased high-risk behaviors and an increase in feelings of safety and well-being among foster or youth that are in foster care. Next slide, please. So really to ensure this, that there is effective care coordination for youth in care, foster parents are often encouraged to develop and maintain working relationships. And these are with a variety of stakeholders. So we're talking birth parents, foster care agency personnel, and of the like. And there are several studies that have found that the quality of working relationships between foster parents and agency staff, they found it to be associated with foster parent outcomes, such as role satisfaction and retention. There's also this idea of positive communication with agency personnel, and it's important to note that foster parents have to feel valued and respected as members of the team. And when those feelings exists, then it has been shown to improve foster parent satisfaction and their commitment to their role of fostering. Studies have also shown that positive working relationships are also a critical component of successful family reunification. And they've even been linked to birth parent and child outcomes. So for example, there have been studies that have found that less tension between birth and foster parents during, say, family visits, that there's a correlation between that and increases in birth parents visiting frequency. And that's also related to stronger birth parent child attachments. So taken together, given the role of foster parents in not only providing care and this continuity of care, but also promoting child well-being, that child welfare agencies are really interested now in finding strategies to improve the working relationship among foster parents and among stakeholders, but specifically foster parents and birth parents. And we're going to talk about one of these approaches today, which is QPI. Next slide, please. So QPI is a systems change approach, and it's designed to improve the quality of foster care services. So they help agencies and systems incorporate best practices and policies. What's important to know about QPI is that it's a collaborative approach, and they're committed to excellent parenting through strong relationships. So there is this emphasis on relationships. So excellent parenting through strong relationships, and these relationships must put the child first. So they have a few key principles. One is that children need excellent parenting. That's both in foster care and once reunification occurs. QPI also believes that parenting and meaningful relationships are one of the most important services that you can provide in foster care. And one of their driving principles would be that stakeholders, they impact and they drive the change. So those who are most impacted by services and policies should be the folks who are driving the change. Next slide, please. So QPI has several activities that help emphasize these principles. I'm just gonna highlight a few of them for you today. The first one is that I've really enjoyed getting to know more about is the comfort calls. And so comfort calls are arranged phone calls that are placed between the foster parent and the birth parent, and this is immediately following a new placement. Now, QPI has also collaborated with the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership, and I believe they'll be presenting later today. And they've collaborated to develop guidebooks to help build partnership across stakeholder groups. QPI also has partnership plans and improved transitioning plans. So for partnership plans, that's created by the foster parents and the caseworkers. And this happens at the beginning of a new placement. So it outlines various expectations related to the mutual responsibilities, as well as, say, performed forms of communication and other ways of information sharing. Next slide, please. So QPI has been, implemented in, and I'm sure the numbers have probably increased since the time of my research study, but at the time it was 80 jurisdictions and across 10 states. But at the time, there had been no external research that had been conducted to understand the implementation and the impact of QPI. And so this evaluation provided me an opportunity to gain a better understanding of the impact of QPI, and specifically on the relationship building process. So basically, I wanted to be able to describe the collaborative atmosphere that I had experienced and witnessed at the national conference. And I wanted to be able to understand that QPI's impact specifically on that relationship. Next slide. Thank you. So the study aims, I will say the findings that I'm presenting today, they're part of a larger process evaluation that took about 2 years. And that process evaluation assessed foster parents' perceptions of QPI satisfaction and their usefulness. And it really explored strategies that engage diverse stakeholders in the QPI process. But for today's presentation, I'm going to focus on foster parents' perceptions of QPI's impact on their experience. And so specifically, I'm talking about establishing and strengthening relationship with birth parents. Next slide. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Who were the folks? When did it happen? How did it happen? So these were foster parents who were a part of a site that has implemented QPI. So these are licensed foster parents. I conducted 3 site visits, one in Florida, Minnesota, and Louisiana. Now, while the entire evaluation lasted about 2 years, the foster parent interviews that I'm going to discuss today were conducted in the spring and summer of 2019. We did this by conducting individual interviews. So we used the interview guide and we asked questions specifically pertaining to QPI's impact on several factors of the foster parent experience. The interviews lasted on average about 53 minutes, and we used the thematic analysis. And this is a method of, once you gather the data, of identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns that you see within the data, and then reporting those patterns. And those are the themes that I'm going to talk about today. Next slide, please. So these are just a few sample questions that were asked during the interview. So you'll see that there were questions around QPI knowledge, if foster parents were involved in the implementation of QPI. But the themes that I'm talking about today are really around this last domain, around QPI impact. So what improvements that have foster parents noticed with their relationship with birth parents? Next slide. So our findings found that, that most foster parents believe that QPI had a positive effect on their relationship with birth parents. So it was interesting because foster parents attributed these positive effects to QPI's cultivation of this team-based approach to meet the best interests of the child. And this was from the beginning, from beginning to end. And so there were 3 themes that were captured around this relationship building process. One was role clarification. The second was the challenging of biases and assumptions. And the third was communication. So the first was role clarification. And so participants discussed how QPI's defining of the expectation for foster parents, as well as birth parents, and the communication of these expectations for all stakeholders really helped facilitate that improved relationship. It's important to note that providing this type of clarification on the roles and the expectations really help reduce the tensions that may normally arise between foster parents and birth parents. And it really helped facilitate this relationship building. And so we have our first quote, which is on the right. And it says, when we met Mom in the hospital, we were fixing to take her son home. And that's hard for anyone. My wife introduced us and she's like, we'd like to give you a hug and we just want you to know that we're here for you. We're gonna love him until he comes back to you. If there's anything you need along the way, you let us know. We exchanged phone numbers. We said we would send her pictures and videos. She could call us, she could FaceTime. She didn't have to just see him that 1 week for the visit. Another foster parent, and this is the quote on the right, talks about how the shared information really helped birth parents understand foster parents' role in the process, and that their role as foster parents was really to support the reunification. So the foster parent says, well, the birth parents were more receptive to me helping them. They're able to see that I'm not the bad guy that came and took their kids from them. I guess they're realizing that I'm here to work with them and help them get their kid back. Thank you. Next slide. And I'll wait. And if you'll we'll just keep it at that one quote. Thank you. The next topic, or the next theme we had, was challenging biases. So foster parents discussed how QPI had also helped them acknowledge and address the biases that they had. And these are the biases that they may have held about birth parents in general, as well as their assumption about the need for building relationships with birth parents. Parents explained, or participants explained, that QPI activities like the comfort calls and the transition plans and also with the help of the agency staff, help encourage their efforts to be intentional in their interactions with birth parents in a different way for them that was more collaborative. So this first quote says, well, the agency staff, they're making sure that we understand our role in it and actively engaging us and following up and saying, okay, how is your relationship with the birth parent? What do you need to do to make it better? Our social worker would ask us those questions. She would follow up and make sure that we were doing our part to work with the parents and have that open communication. So in addition to challenging these biases and assumptions, foster parents also shared that QPI helped them appreciate birth parents' experiences, and this helped them develop a sense of empathy for birth parents. They shared that this empathy had affected the way that they engage with birth parents. One foster parent explained it this way. Next quote, please. We had the impression that we were just not going to like this guy. And then we met him and we immediately realized our first impression was off. We told him, you can call, you can text, you can whatever. And along the way, we maintained that. He called every night faithfully to sing his son a lullaby. He did that for 5 months until his son went home. Foster parents also believe that birth parents notice the change in their interactions, and they often acknowledge that shift. This same foster parent noted something else that was said to him from the birth father. Get the next quote, please. The birth father said, I just want to thank you because you treated me like a father. You never treated me like someone who lost his son because he was a bad guy and because he did these things. You along the way treated me like a person and you allowed me to be his father. Thank you. Could we go to the next slide? Thank you. So our last theme that we're going to talk about is this idea of communication. So foster parents believe that QPI had positive effects on their relationship with foster parents, and this is particularly communication and intentional interactions. So they sought these opportunities to interact with birth parents positively and collaboratively. And QPI's team-based approach encouraged this communication among, birth and foster parents from the beginning. So this not only made providing care for children and youth easier for foster parents because they learn more from the birth parents about the child, but it also empowered birth parents to be more forthcoming with them about their circumstances and their need for support. And this is without that fear of losing their child. And participants talked about how this strengthened the relationship. And so one parent actually noted this, and we'll take the first quote, please. So now it's like a relationship, almost a friendship, I feel like that's definitely improved. It's allowed for more honesty, and this bio parent has shared more. Foster parents also explained that through QPI, birth parents viewed them as an additional source of support that they could call upon in the future. So there was another quote that I wanted to share with you. And so the foster parent says, well, once that child goes home, those parents have someone to rely on. They can always come back to you or reach out to you if they're in trouble. We built that relationship. They feel comfortable, where they would maybe rely on you to help them out in a bind when they need it, so that their child is not put in danger again. There was another foster parent that spoke about the benefits of this continued relationship between birth and foster parents because foster parents were more supportive. So the birth mom told me that she was really happy to be working with us because all of her friends were in the drug crowd and that drug scene that she was getting out of to get her kid back. She felt like she had nobody to go to anymore because if she went to her friends, she'd just fall back into that cycle. She said that that's been a really positive thing for her to be able to have us to talk to and be able to work with us and have that person to support her so that she's not in that crowd that she was before anymore. I think that birth parents getting a lot more support on their end to be more receptive of us and working with us more. So really taken together, QPI helped foster parents realize that it's in the best interest of the child for all relevant caregivers to communicate effectively, to work collaboratively, and to get along. Next slide, please. Can we move to the next slide? Thank you. So now we're getting to the summary of findings. So this is our so what? What are our big takeaways here? Well, hopefully, the findings have shown that relationships do matter. They're really important to this process. And that QPI sites have developed these concrete activities to demonstrate these essential elements, one being the benefits of building relationship across stakeholders. Past research suggests that foster parent engagement with and support for birth parents can reduce parental tension and alleviate fears of having a child in the foster care system. Next slide, please. So it's usually in the child's best interest for birth and foster parents to maintain this positive and supportive relationship. And our findings suggest that foster care agencies may benefit from incorporating these strategies and more opportunities that really promote this frequent positive interactions between birth and foster parents. It's also important to gain a better understanding of the role of foster parents. If you think about it, they have something we like to call this dual role. Not only are they parental figures, but they're also professionals in that being a foster parent is a job. And so with this role of being a parental figure and a professional, sometimes conflict can arise and confusion around when to serve in which role and how serving in one role may then impact their standing in another role. And so it's really important for child welfare professionals and agencies to understand this role a bit more and think about how the role in essence could create barriers to building stronger foster birth parent relationships. I think finally, child welfare workers who are really intentional about helping to create this kind of environment where stakeholders' relationships can thrive, especially when thinking about the birth and foster parent relationship, that there may be additional tools that are needed in trainings on best practices. And this is specifically so that professionals can help prepare foster parents to effectively engage with birth parents. Because if you think about it anecdotally, at times foster care agencies may have had this idea and know about the benefit of these relationships, but few places or few agencies have I would say tools or a plan in order to train and implement child welfare professionals on how they can best promote this relationship. Next slide, please. So I will say that we do have a paper out, and it is a wonderful paper. Now, I could be biased, but I think it's a great read. And I think what's most important about it is not only does it talk about the relationships between birth parents and foster parents, but it also talks about the importance of the relationship between foster parents and agency staff and other stakeholders, as well as foster parents having better relationship with fellow foster parents and how that can help strengthen the foster care system and really improve the foster parent experience. So I invite you to read that paper and that article. Next slide. That is all I have for today. So thank you for your time, and I welcome questions. And we'll also have Jennifer from the Youth Law Center here to answer any questions about the study as well as QPI.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, and welcome, Jennifer. Looks like we have about 5 questions in 10 minutes, so we will get through what we're able. I'll just go through the list here. So, sometimes maintain relationships with the child's family is unsafe for the child. If only the foster parent has knowledge of the contact, What is suggested for the agency who is ultimately responsible for the safety of the child in state's custody to be able to ensure the safety of the child? A state agency is limited by the laws and policies that dictate how they care for children in custody. Can or when should this be circumvented on a case-by-case basis without violating any laws or policies that govern the decisions and actions of the agency?
I could start with this. I first wanted to say that the sites that we did, that we conducted the site visits, they were both state and private agencies. And so I think the important point would be that there should be collaboration from the beginning. So there shouldn't be communication in silo where agencies are not aware of the way in which foster parents and birth parents are communicating. And so I think it's up to the foster parent or the foster agencies to set up protocols and strategies and approaches so that communication and these interactions can be not only safe, but also beneficial for the child. And if they are not, then there should be protocols in place because we want these to be quality interactions. But I see that Jennifer may have something to add.
Yeah, I can jump in. Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I wanted to just emphasize what Dr. Lewis said about the processes in a system and how important they are. When we started QPI 14 years ago, we started by actually going and doing listening sessions with youth, with foster parents, with birth parents, with staff. And QPI is actually not about birth and foster parent relationships. It's really about making sure that if we have to remove a child and put them in foster care, that they can receive the excellent parenting every single day that helps to mitigate the trauma of that experience and will really help them grow and thrive. And so our first question to those stakeholders was, what gets in the way of your system of every single child getting the love and nurturing and care that they deserve? And across the board, what we heard from both foster parents and birth parents was the barriers that systems put up in between birth and foster parents working together and collaborating and sharing parenting was one of the barriers that was most important. And so there were birth and foster parents who were in fact working together, but as you heard Sharonda and Katie sharing before, they were having to sneak behind the back of the system to do it and living in fear all the time that they would be accused of violating laws or regulations. Foster parents were worried about losing their license or being disciplined or not getting further placements. And birth parents were worried about reunification being interfered with. And so the work of QPI was really about saying you have to make the practice, policy, and culture changes in your system so that we're never putting a barrier in something that's good for children. And that requires a lot of things. It requires changes from the way that you do removal so that you're talking a particular way when you have to do a removal to the parent around where their child is going and what they can expect in the next 24 hours. It requires changes in the way that you recruit and message what the job of foster parenting is to prospective foster parents. It requires changes in the way you do placements, in the way you do ongoing support for families, and you deal with things like concurrent planning expectations. It requires changes in the way that you return children back to their family. It requires changes in the way that you listen to and you talk to youth who really should have an opinion too, that's listened to about whether and how they want their birth family engaged. So all of those things have to be changed in order for systems to support this effectively and for parents to not be saddled with the responsibility of holding all the work on their own. We want child welfare policy to actually, reflect the interventions that make a positive impact. And to do that, you have to do what Dr. Lewis says. You have to make sure that policy is actually supporting and practice is supporting, that we're not undermining these relationships.
Thank you, Jennifer. In that same lens, could you address the question, did you hear from any of the youth voices in Minnesota from the Youth Voices group when you had the site visit?
We did not, and that's a thing that keeps me up at night because when we went to the site visit, we learned about all the work that the foster care youth we're doing in QPI and at Aspire. And so we actually put it in our feedback to QPI as well as other stakeholders, the importance of foster care youth. And so we had also talked with the funding agency, Annie E. Casey, to see if there was an opportunity to do another study, conduct another study where we're really hearing from the youth. And if I were to do this again, I would have made the youth voices top of the list, and I would have sought their opinions first and their perspectives. It would have been really interesting.
Great, thank you. Have there been direct conversations by workers with foster parents about race and class biases that may negatively impact relationships with birth parents?
I think that there has been, it depends on the site, right? Because for some sites, there are not racially and ethnically diverse populations. And so it's difficult to have that conversation. But one of the questions we did ask, because we also had focus groups, we asked about how race and ethnicity played a part in the way in which they interacted with foster parents as well as birth parents. And so there are some, I would say there are now studies that are coming out with different frameworks on how foster care agencies can have these conversations about differences in perceptions of parenting based on culture, based on race and ethnicity, and the beliefs around certain principles. And so that's something that's been happening the last couple of years, but just to be helpful, there is something called the SHARP framework, and I can add that information to the chat, but it's a framework that helps providers have these conversations about race and ethnicity as well as systematic oppression and how that has contributed to experiences of families that are involved with child welfare.
And I just want to chime in and say that you're going to hear from QPI Minnesota tomorrow. And that QPI Minnesota has really been a leader around looking at race and equity issues and trying to work with the community, in particular the Black community in Minnesota, to change the conception of child welfare and foster care as an entity that destroys families, and saying this sort of new way of doing business in child welfare really is about preserving relationships. It's about strengthening families, and that is a pathway for getting families who are willing, able, and excited to work with other families who are coming from their community. So I think this is a critical topic, and this partnership between birth and foster parents, it's really key and critical in terms of preserving the child or youth culture, right? Their language, their cultural experiences. I know there are so many young people like me who lost language while they were in foster care, who lost sort of the opportunity to, practice cultural traditions because there was no relationship with our birth families. So it is an important mechanism both to attract a type of foster parent who's willing and able to do that work and who comes from the communities our family come from, but also to have practices that really incorporate racial and cultural equity.
Thank you, Jennifer, and for foreshadowing QPI Minnesota tomorrow. And Dr. Lewis, if you are able to share that resource in the chat, that would be excellent.
Will do.
Okay, we have a few more minutes and a few more questions, so hopefully we can get to them all. Let's go with this one. Is there any data available to show that foster parent and birth parent partnerships lead to higher numbers of reunifications?
So there are a few studies that have some associations that when there are more collaborative relationships between foster parents and birth parents, that birth parents have they have perceptions of having more social support, that they gain confidence in their parenting and are more motivated to complete the tasks and the responsibilities needed for a faster family reunification. I can also add a few of those articles in the link as well, if you're interested.
And I would add on to Dr. Lewis and say that one of the things that we have done since Dr. Lewis did her study to sort of build on this idea that we really need better mechanisms to hear regularly from resource parents and birth parents and have that information go directly to the agency is we've launched a data initiative that we call Quality Parenting Outreach in partnership with Aikido Labs. And we survey foster parents about how practice implementation is actually going. So you don't just change practices and policy on paper, but you actually get to hear as an agency leader directly from families around whether things have changed. And one of our surveys was on the QPI practice of comfort calls. And we got back data from our site showing that when a comfort call happens and there's an early introduction and relationship between the birth and family, foster family, that there is there are improved rates of reunification, there's more receptiveness and support for reunification, and that process goes more smoothly, which was really exciting to us because we had heard that anecdotally, but we hadn't actually seen the data.
And to add on to Jennifer's point, we did have a part of the study was a focus group. And so it had several stakeholders from QPI who these were providers, these were foster parents, birth parents. And so we did ask about, what keeps you engaged in QPI in the process. And, there was mention of faster reunifications and being able to hear about those success stories, not only within their specific child welfare agency, but also across other QPI sites was really helpful. So there are hopefully, and I don't know, Jennifer, if you all are capturing that now, but this idea of shared storytelling, especially around the piece of pertaining to reunification.
Okay, thank you. We're getting a few more questions, but I'm gonna just roll with it and see if we can get to one or two more. So will QPI be rolled out in every child welfare agency?
I can answer that. I think our idea initially in launching the Quality Parenting Initiative was that we really needed to figure out what the culture, policy, and practice changes that would support every single child in care receiving the parenting that they need and that they deserve, and that evidence tells us is actually the most effective intervention. And so the only way we could do that was by working insights to do that. So, our goal is not for QPI to take over the world and be a thing in every child welfare agency, but it is to say that we think every child welfare agency needs to learn from the culture, practice, and policy changes that have been implemented in QPI, and that really all of those things should just be the way that we do business in foster care. So that's our goal, is not to have everyone doing QPI, but to really change the way we do foster care, so that when we have to, there's no other option but to use foster care, it is an experience that does not cause further harm to children. So that would be my answer, is that what I hope is that we are creating a new way of doing foster care.
Thank you, Jennifer. So are there any studies on how foster parents deal with single DAs as two moms? I don't know if Leroy might need to.
I'm thinking the question might have to do with dads.
Yep.
Stacey.
Yep. Is there any, go ahead. So are there any studies on how foster parents deal with single, dads or as compared to moms, perhaps?
So Jennifer, I don't know if you could answer this. I have not seen any studies as of recently, but I know that there is, these are questions that are actively being answered, specifically around single dads and their role in child welfare. and how to better engage fathers, but also best practices and strategies. Because I think sometimes in child welfare, when we say parents, a lot of studies then will have only mothers in the study, birth moms. And so there is active studies at this time, but no published findings that I can think of at this moment.
Yeah, and I'm not in the research world like Dr. Lewis is, but what I will say is that the body of evidence that is out there around relationships between foster parents and birth parents is very limited. Actually, it's part of the reason it's so excited that Dr. Lewis is able to contribute, because there's not a lot of research, period. And as Dr. Lewis said, most of that research actually sort of assumes that fathers don't exist. And so in our QPI work, we have a very specific and intentional focus, both on birth fathers, but also on foster fathers, because, you know, it's sort of like men do not exist in this system, and they're a really important part of the equation. And it does require very specific and intentional approaches, and especially for dads of color, right? And, you know, I always hear when you don't intentionally think about how to serve particular people, then you exclude them and you don't serve them well. And that is certainly true with our dads. So the practices are largely the same in terms of the agency, but they do require specific focus, intentionality, and customization, I guess is the best way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. We are out of time for questions, but Jory, Devin, and Eddie, we will put your questions in a parking lot document and see if Dr. Lewis and Jennifer are able to address any of those. And then we will share any resources mentioned throughout this presentation with the audience. And then let's see here. I'm gonna put Jennifer's contact in the chat for everybody, because up on the screen you can see Dr. Lewis's. And we are right on time. So thank you very much, Dr. Lewis and Jennifer, for joining us for this presentation. Please reach out with any questions.
Stacy, we can't hear you.
Welcome back. We'd like to introduce to you our third and final presentation of today. The Birth and Foster Parent Partnership, also known as BFPP. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, but members of this team will discuss policies and practices that child welfare systems and other organizations are putting in place to support birth parents and foster parents in working together to promote the well-being and stability of children and youth who are under care. So our panelists today will share experiences in building and supporting meaningful partnerships and discuss how children and youth are more likely to thrive when the important adults in their lives collaborate with each other and share responsibilities in decision-making. I'm now going to hand it off to Sophia.
And am I right in thinking Sophia is going to be handing it off to Robin?
Go ahead, Robin.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Robin Robbins, and I am a foster resource parent from Northern California for the last 20 years. And I am a proud member of the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership, which you are going to be able to hear about in our next presentation. So welcome, everybody. And I'm going to, we're going to talk a little bit about our agenda. We're going to try really hard to get some great stuff into this small amount of time. Because we've been sharing these workshops nationally for a while with some of the same information. So I really want to thank, I love saying this acronym, I really want to thank CASCW for letting us have this opportunity. And of course, I was astounded and moved by my colleagues, Sharonda and Katie, sharing their story in their vulnerable ways, but also their hope for and their actual practical experience of how we can make relationships work with what we have in place already. So that's the exciting news. I love working with the disruptors, Sharonda, and I'm super happy to be working with the leaders of people with lived experience that I'm involved with now. So thank you to also QPI and Dr. Lewis for finally putting some, we're happy to get some actual research. I know there's other research, but we know research drives change. And this is what we're doing, is we're changing how people have been working with relationships in the child welfare system. So this is all very exciting. And this is my chance to really share with my colleagues a passion that has been mine for many, many years. So I'm going to move on and let you get to know the presenters, my incredible presenters who are here today. We'll have each of you say a little bit about just who you are. We're going to move kind of fast here. We have a minute, but how about I start with you, Paula? Do you want to introduce yourself to folks?
Well, absolutely. I would love to introduce myself to everyone. Hello, my name is Paula Bibb Samuels. I am a birth parent and also a kinship placement individual. And so my role here is as a birth parent and a kinship individual with lived experience. And why I want to let you know why partnership is important to me. Partnership is important to me because partnership is like a girdle. And those of you who know me a little bit know how I feel about a girdle. A girdle helps to keep everything in place and it smooths out the rough edges. Excuse me. A girdle is support. And so partnerships provide support and they smooth out the rough edges and they are able to make that person's core better. And that's why partnership is important to me. So I believe I'll just pass it on to Marquita.
I don't know how I can follow that, but good morning all. My name is Marquita King, and for the last 12 years, my husband and I have been fostering with the ARC Northern Chesapeake region in Maryland. We're also adoptive parents. I've been a member of BFPP for 4 years, and I think these types of relationships are important because they directly affect how well the reunification of the foster child to their family plays out. I think foster parents can definitely be reassuring to birth parents while their children are away from them, and we can be supportive in helping them to resolve any issues so their children can return home as quickly as possible. So these partnerships are extremely important. Jody, over to you.
Hey everybody, my name is Jody Rogers. I'm really excited to be here today. I am from Sonoma County, California, And I am also a member of the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership, as well as the Birth Parent National Network. And I want to say, so how I got to be here, when I think, why am I here? So I am a mother whose children were removed at one point and walked through reunification in my own life. And so I use that lived experience. And today I am a birth parent mentor. So I get to be a support to parents going through the child welfare system. And so when I think, why is partnership important to me, this is really, and try to keep it short. It's hard to follow. I love Paula's girdle story. It's like my favorite, her scenario of that. But because everybody involved deserves that, because it's the most human thing that we can do is work together, no matter what role you're in, whether you're a social worker, a resource parent, a foster parent, a birth parent, or the child. When we all work together, that's when we truly see the healing happen. And so I think that is why it's important to me. And I will pass this back to Robin.
Thank you, Jody. And I also want to sort of identify that Jody and I come from the same county, and we work together as a team. Jody's my local partner. We are a birth parent, foster parent team. And we have been doing this work together since I first met her several years ago, when at that point she wanted to get out of the room as fast as possible when she saw me there. And now I think that would be pretty much the opposite. We are working together beautifully. So this is a power team you have in front of you right now. I wish you had more time to hear everything that's going on, but I think I'll start with a quick run through of the agenda if we're ready for that slide. There it is. We've done our welcome. And once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for staying through the next, however long we have, 50 minutes, and really listening to us talk about our shared experience of what's actually happening. We aren't going to share with you a new idea or a whole new thing you have to read and study and figure out. We're going to share with you actual experience and how it is really working for families and staff members and social workers. So our welcome, we are going to share 3 quick workshop goals. I'm going to try to get a little bit of information in about the BFPP, and then we'll move to our relationship guide. We will have resources at the end that are fabulous for you to take home or look up, but we'll see how much time we have for questions. That may have to happen later in a parking lot situation, but we're looking forward to that. So what I'm going to do with the next slide is turn it over to Marquita to talk about our workshop goals. Go ahead, Marquita.
Okay, so we have 3 goals that we hope to accomplish during today's workshop. Our first goal is to increase your understanding of the birth and foster parent partnership movement. If you're not already a part of the BFPP movement, we hope that you will gain a better understanding of what we're all about. We are committed to making changes in the way birth and foster parents and kinship caregivers and staff can work together to build long-lasting relationships to help support the children and their families. We hope you will join us in this exciting movement. Our second goal is to introduce you to the 2 tools that the BFPP members developed. The first tool is a relationship building guide, and the second tool is a state and local leaders guide to building a strong policy and practice foundation. We hope in turn that you will get as excited about these tools like we are and take them back into your own communities and states and help us in building these important relationships that shift attitudes, policies, and practices. Today, we will be talking more in depth about the relationship building guide, as this will help provide you with a better understanding of how we can build these important relationships between birth parents, foster parents, kinship caregivers, and staff. Our third and final goal is to share BFPP resources with all of you and explain how to access them at the Children's Trust Fund Alliance website, which is ctfalliance.org/partnering-with-parent/BFPP. So up next, we'll have Robin share some background about the development of the BFPP and the 2 tools. Robin, over to you.
Thank you, Marquita. And those websites will be available to you to see. You won't have to memorize them, but we want to keep asking you to reach out and look at what we have on the website. So here we are, here's my family, and this picture does not have all of us there. This picture was of one of the first times we met in person at the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership in Seattle. And I just really want to share that we had 3 amazing organizations work together collaboratively to give us this opportunity. And they were the Casey Family Programs, the Children's Trust Fund Alliance, and the Quality Parenting Initiative, which you just heard about. All got together and decided what would happen if we put birth parents and foster parents together in the same room. Well, you can see in this picture what happened. In fact, we didn't pay that much attention to which role we had by the time we were done. We were focused together to do the work of giving families the support they need for more than reunification, for lasting relationships, no matter what happens in a family situation. So we have been working nationally to create practice, policy, and legislation, hopefully, and anything we can to bring these practices into our local communities and also in our statewide and national and regional areas, anywhere that we can get you to listen. And by the way, if I may just say, I'm pretty excited to have the opportunity to actually being listened to the people who do the work that you do, because you are working so hard and so busy that even as a foster parent, it was hard to find time to do what everybody needed to have done in a case. So it's been really exciting to have this opportunity to share with the people who are working so hard to make children's lives better. So thank you for being here. So I am going to also tell you, oh yes, of course, why we're here, that in the process of doing all the different work in all the different areas as parent partners and foster parents and kinship caregivers, we also have had the opportunity to create the tools you're going to hear about today. And these tools are just a format. They have information that is helpful in trying to cross those silos, get across that barrier that we have, which I believe is artificially in place between birth parents and foster parents, but it's really a solid barrier that's been there for a long time. So we created these tools, and when I say we had the support of the organizations, and what you see in the tools was written by people, parents and caregivers, and you'll see quotes and all sorts of wonderful things in them. So we have 2 wonderful tools. Let's see if I can hold mine up so I never go anywhere without my birth and foster parent tool. And since we already talked about our secret girdle, we can also say I get called Vanna White because this has really changed my life. So you see the tools here. I wanted to describe which was which. The Birth and Foster Parent Partnership State and Local Leaders Guide to Building a Strong Policy and Practice Foundation. That particular guide is going to be helpful to agency workers who are trying to create an environment for these relationships to grow and to be safe and to fit within all the laws and the boundaries that are in place right now. So that is a wonderful resource for folks who really want to make a difference. The Birth and Foster Parent Partnership Relationship Building Guide you'll hear more about today. This was written by folks with lived experience, and it has some great strategies, hands-on strategies for those of you who can use them right now. And in a situation, you can give them to parents, you can give them to foster parents, you can hand them over to your division director. You can pull out a chart and work on it, but you'll see more about that in a bit. And then in the middle, you see the executive summary, which talks just a little bit about what I've been sharing about the BFPP and the tools and what the work we're doing. So those are just some of the tools that we have in our resources for you. So I am going to, let's move to the next slide. See if I left anything out about this. So next, this slide touches my heart, and this is a very long quote by a man who we sadly lost last year, but this is my friend Luke and Jody's friend Luke with his amazing little guy. And I'm going to turn this time over to Paula to talk about some of what's going on with her locally and her work, whether it be local or not. Just to let you know that we are all over this country. We've been doing this work for several years. So she'll share her story of what she thinks these partnerships could really do to improve systems. I'm ready for you now, Paula. Go ahead.
Thank you so very much, Robin. Well, here in Texas, because I did not tell y'all where I was from when I introduced myself, because, you know, everything is bigger in Texas, and I felt like you should just automatically know because this personality comes through the screen. But here in Texas, I have been working with another agency called Arrows, and they are an adoption agency, a foster care / adoption agency. And what we've done is we have presented the tools, the wonderful tools that Robin showed. And, you know, because I have my background up, you can't really see it, maybe sneak up on it, that I keep with me as well. And so what we've done, we have presented to their directors, the high level staff or upper level staff, and they loved it. They loved the idea of what we were trying to promote, because we think relationships are very important. And we understand that when a child and a family has support from birth, when you have the birth family, the foster family, and or kinship family involved, and everybody's working toward the same goal, and the relationship is built, then a community is enlarged. And we know that, you know, I know in our community, we say it takes a village to raise a child. And so we need that community, that village, in order to help raise these children that may have been temporarily, and that is our hope, that they are temporarily have entered into care. And so we presented to Arrows, we presented to their, you know, like board of directors, and they loved it. So then we presented to their staff as well, because again, they loved it. And now we're just working on a date and time, you know, with COVID kind of coming back, we're having to readjust some things, but we are trying to find a date and time to present not only to more staff, but also to the parents that are involved. And that's your birth parents, your foster parents, and your kinship parents, and your adoptive parents, potential adoptive parents. They want us to present these tools to them because they understand that regardless of the outcome, if a child or a family, and I have to say that child or children, if they are able to enlist or to have this supportive circle around them, that girdle, then they are more likely than not to be successful, even if they have to remain out of the home. But again, our goal is that the removal is temporary. And so then when these children are returned home, then they're able to still continue that support that came from a foster parent or a kinship placement. Because again, we need the girdle. We need something that holds us together, smooths out the rough edges, and supports us in those times of need. And so that's what we've been doing here in Texas. And we're continuing to try to promote this work all over the world, but the United States is our goal. I believe that I'm going to pass this back to Robin, who will now facilitate a more in-depth discussion on the content that's included in your relationship building guide. Robin, go for it.
Thank you very much, Paula. And once again, I wish you could see or hear or understand the actual work these amazing leaders I'm here with today are doing in their area. And just notice the differences. You know, I know a lot of folks ask questions of, you know, has there been a difference in the reunification rate and those kinds of things. And we are working, everybody's working, all the agencies, to really get that information down. But in the meantime, as Katie said so importantly, we can't wait. We can't wait. Families can't wait. Children can't wait. And when I started my work as a foster parent 20 years ago, I never had the intention of adopting. My husband and I were there to support the system and to support families. But we were started with that idea, that mindset that we needed to be careful and we need to be safe and stay away from these people, because if they could have hurt their child, then, you know, how safe would they be around us? And that was the really sort of embedded way our system shared. But we got past that pretty fast. And one of the ways we did it, also Jennifer Rodriguez shared, we did it without having that social worker saying, yes, okay, go do this. This is okay. We did what needed to be done to keep families and children together, but it was very uncomfortable. We want to be here working as a team. So fast forward to where we are now, we have a fabulous local QPI run partnership in our agency. It's actually one of the departments in our agency where we work together as a team with foster and birth parents to support a family. And we look together as a team at what families need. And then people with lived experience, people, Jody, who's walked in the path of these parents, and myself, who's been the foster parent in this county so long, for example, can give a family the support they need and really hear what they need. So you have no idea how far this can go. And so we're going to look at the birth and foster parent partnership guide today, but you'll keep hearing me. This is my form of the girdle, which I love that you shared, because all the folks here, all 530 some folks are going to remember that. They're just going to remember that. So when you remember the girdle, maybe somehow you can attach it to this wonderful guide that we have to share with you. And this particular guide, the birth and foster parent partnership relationship building guide, has the tools within it. I don't think we have a slide showing it, but what we did with this guide, all the folks who created it, is put 4 charts covering 4 separate areas that felt like a chronological way a family might go through the system. But it's important that you know that any of these areas, when you look at these tools, any of these areas can be used separately or at any point in a case. So for instance, here's chart number 1, and don't worry, we don't expect you to be able to read this. This is just sort of your memory will see this in your mind when you open the one. If hopefully some of you have the tools already, but if you don't, when you do get a chance to see them, you'll see chart number 1. And so the 4 charts we're about to give you a little bit of experience. We wish we had more time to really share what's going on with each of these, but we're going to give you a short experience of each of the charts. And what you can do here with these charts is you can pull one of these ideas out. You can ask the foster parent to look at it and say, which one of these do you think would be a good way to start a conversation? But you can pull one of these charts out separately and take it to a staff meeting and have people have a conversation there. You can send different charts depending on what's going on with the family, or what maybe you want your supervisor to hear, or what work you're doing with a particular caregiver or a kinship caregiver where you think this might be helpful. So this tool is very flexible, and I think you're going to be interested and excited in seeing what it can do. So chart number 1, are you ready, Jody? I'm going to call on my partner, my other half, I don't know how my husband feels about that, but we've been partnering pretty wonderfully for the last several years, and we have seen changes in families and we have seen successes. So what we're going to do right here is talk about the first chart. You see, building the relationship. Because as you heard from Jennifer and QPI talking about comfort calls and initial relationships, the sooner you can start this relationship, the better. And we're working against some tough odds. We're working with families that are in pain for a lot of reasons. And then on top of that, they have the added trauma of losing their children. So there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of discomfort. And then you have the foster family or the kinship caregiver. You have these people who also their lives are in flux about what's going to happen next. So we really stand by starting this relationship at the very beginning as soon as possible. Now, remember, if you haven't had a chance to do that, you can do this building the relationship anywhere it's needed. Sometimes you need to do it more than once and shore up a relationship. But so Jody, should we talk a little bit about the case we had with a mom named Laura, and a little bit about how you helped make my experience and Laura's experience and ultimately the infant, her son, so much more possible by our initial relationship building?
Yes. So what was really different about this case is that Robin and myself, we met back at the convening that was mentioned earlier with the 3 agencies. And we just thought to ourselves, what would it look like if we were able, me as the birth parent mentor and Robin as the foster parent, to really wrap a family in support? And so we came back from that convening and went to our agency and asked for their blessing on piloting a partnership case. And so we got the go ahead. And so what was really different about this mom, it was a mom. Robin got a placement for a baby and let me know. But this time, so I usually meet parents at their very first court hearing, which we call here the detention hearing. I was able to walk up to this mom and sit down next to her, and I was able to share with her what I knew about the woman that was caring for her child. I was able to share with her things like, this woman wants to be a part of helping your family heal. Little things like that. And I was really able to plant a seed between the two, so that when that first visit did happen, I was also able to go back with Robin and say, mom is really motivated. She's already seeking getting support with treatment. And what that did was it paved the way for Robin to push harder, like, hey, this visit needs to happen, I'll supervise. And what was really awesome that lives in my heart is that when the two mothers first met, I remember birth mom running up to Robin and just wrapping her arms around Robin and saying, thank you so much for all you do. And so when we're talking about building the relationship, it can be a really creative thing. Using your resources, using your community partners, using just whatever it is that you have out there to use to really start that foundation, because children thrive when the adults in their lives are working together as one unit. And like when Paula refers to the girdle, I love that. I love that because for me, it really helps me put everything into perspective, you know, and that's what Robin and I got to do for this specific mother is we got to wrap around her and just hold her, and she got to heal because of that process.
Thank you, Jody. And we could write a book about this particular case. In fact, we've shared about it before. As we move on to the next chart, I just want to let you all know that this mama who came into our care had lost 3 other children to the system and was on track to lose this one as well. And because the social workers involved and the supervisors sat down and listened to what we wanted to do, we just wanted to create an environment for a relationship to happen, which really didn't mean putting things in place. Most of the time it meant removing barriers. Like, okay, you don't have to wait till you have the right supervisor there. You can put 2 people in a room together and they're really going to be okay. And that's what happened in this case. So fast forward 4 years and lots of work. We're still supporting. I believe we probably each got a call from this mom sometime this week, Jody, and this is this little guy's 4 years old, and he was medically fragile and had a lot of surgeries, and mom is doing great. She not only has this child as a 4-year-old and a job and is helping other parents, but she has her other children back that she had lost. So really, it turned out all she needed was a little bit of support and a change in the mindset of this particular social worker was very supportive. She was willing to step out of the way. And before we go into our role play, I want to say the social worker in this case, I remember very profoundly said, this was one of my easiest cases. Robin and Jody did all the work. Now, she's not talking about the paperwork and the legal stuff and all of the court issues. She's talking about the work of relationship building and visits and making sure the children are getting what they need and the families as well. So it was a really powerful experience. And the other part is I have these families in my life now that are helping me and enriching my life. So that was a great example. Chart number 2 moves on to supporting the relationship. And I think this is a key area which we do not have time to really go into in depth. We're going to share with you a role play. I know all of you probably know about role plays, but I'm going to encourage you to look at one of these charts or some of the information in the guide, pull out a situation and try it on. We need systems change. We need QPI and we need the Alliance and Casey Family Programs and all the researchers to get out there and make this change happen. But in the meantime, try it on. Just take one of these and say, okay, you be this person, you be this person, and let's see what happens. Really helpful when I'm training foster parents to do these role plays. So chart number 2 is about supporting the relationship. In my experience, that's really about communication, exchanging information, how that's going to happen, when that's going to happen. And hopefully it's building on that relationship you already have in a start to with your comfort calls and your initial meetings. So we are going to do a quick role play. Usually we don't move through it this fast. We have not rehearsed this, have we, Jody? Jody's going to be the birth parent. I'm going to be the foster parent in this case, which I wasn't expecting. So this is really going to be some real life happening in front of you. And the only thing I ask is that Sophia, you stop me in time if we keep going. So let's see, I am going to read about I've lost my place in pages, can you tell? I'm going to set up the role play, and then we're just going to talk a couple minutes about what would be happening. So this is here it is. I'm so sorry. This is Jody being the birth parent and me being the foster parent, although you don't have to have your role play have the actual roles and what's happening in our situation. So you ready, Jody? I'm moving from facilitator to real life here. So the birth parent runs into the visit out of breath and late for her visit for the second time. The foster parent asks the social worker if she can talk to the birth parent for a minute at the end of the visit. Okay. So, hey, Jody, how'd it go? Look at this little one. He seems pretty happy.
Oh yeah, it was good. It was good. He's, our visits always go really good. I miss him so much.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to see you miss part of this visit too, but I'm glad you got here in time. But I'm noticing that seems to be, a problem for you. And the rules we have in place here are if you're late to a visit 3 times in a row, they have to reevaluate the visits and where they are and how they're happening, and it's a lot more. So, what do you think is going on?
I'm so sorry. Listen, Robin, I'm really sorry. Okay, please don't stop my visits. It's all I have to hang on to. Please don't take my visits. It's all I have. I'll do better. I'm so sorry. I'll do better. Okay.
You were working so hard, Jody. You are wanting to be a parent to this baby and these visits. Look how happy he is having been held by you. He knows your smell and your touch, and he really needs time with you too. So I'm wondering if we could maybe look at what's going on with the visit and how you're getting here. Maybe you can talk to the social worker about it. What is so hard about showing up at a certain time at the visit?
I'm scared. I'm scared to get in trouble for saying this. I don't want to be irresponsible. I don't want to be in trouble. Are you going to tell on me?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can go ahead and talk to me about this. If there's something I think the social worker needs to know about what's going on with your case, I need to be able to share. But, maybe we could work together with that once we have a better idea of what will work in your visits or what might be better for you, so you don't always have to be rushing. And then we could talk to the social worker together and see what we can do to put a solution here so that you do have the chance to be with this little.
This visit is 15 miles from town. Like, I don't have money. I walk around all week and picking up change off the ground to get here. I ran out of gas on my way here and ran the rest of the way. I don't have the money, but if I tell the workers that, they're going to think, oh, she definitely can't care for her kids. I'll leave earlier. I'll figure it out.
Jody, I saw you work so hard to be here today. I'm just feeling really sad that this is so hard for you to even get to the visit, because it's hard enough to do everything else you're working on with your life and also being a parent to this little one. And I think maybe there might be some support for you about transportation that you haven't found out about yet. So that's definitely worth asking the social worker about. And I can help you do that if that would be a good thing to do for you. We could talk to her about bus passes or changing to the other location, which I think might be easier for you to get to for the visit. And I would not mind moving there if that's really what we need to do or what the social worker decides. But you shouldn't have to add.
I just feel like I want to do whatever they want. I just feel like I just don't want to ask anything. And I just want to show them that I'm a good mom and I can take care of my kids. And I'm really not the monster that it says I am in that report. Like, I love my kids, Robin. I'm scared. I'm a good mom. I love my kids and they love me. And I just want to show them I can do this. I'm scared to ask for help. I'm scared to tell them that I don't have money, because then it just makes me look even more like I can't care for them.
Well, I think that everybody here is really wanting to focus on you and your baby being together, but it may not look like that right now. And it must be so scary, and on top of all the pain of not holding that baby. I'm wondering, how would you feel if I asked the social worker if I could come in at the beginning of the visit for a little while and be there with you and help the baby get used to you? And then you'll always know that I'm there and you'll see me, and if I can wait in the lobby or whatever works out, so that when you get here, you don't have to spend so much of your time calming down and being afraid and worrying about things. We can just sit and talk about your baby a little bit. What do you think?
Do you think my son's not used to me anymore?
No, I think this is our chance for me to get a good look at how he reacts to you and how you hold him and how you parent him, so I can know what you like doing when you have to be apart with him. So we're really working on figuring out how our two different ways of parenting are going to be best for your son. But the visit, I think he just wants you to hold him and love him and be with him. So let's figure it out. Let's figure out talking to the social worker and maybe doing things a little bit differently so that getting to the visit isn't your biggest focus or a reason why you have to be afraid to talk to your social worker. So we'll work together to figure this out.
Okay, I mean, could you ask for the visits to be closer?
Well, I think that as a team, as working together, we can communicate with your social worker. She is really willing to help you, and I can definitely be part of that conversation. But I think that it's important that you get a chance to say how you feel and what's going on. So let's try to figure out how to make that happen too, that we can all be working together. Okay.
Okay.
I need to go now, and I am going to take your baby, and but he's your baby. And like we said before, if you need me to shoot you a text or a picture whenever, now that we're in person again, that's great. But I know you need to know what's going on with him more often, and I'm more than happy to do that for you. So thank you for listening to me. I think we can work this out so everybody's feeling a lot more comfortable.
Okay.
What do you think? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk some more next time. All right. I'll see you in a couple days.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for trying to be here on time, and I'll be there waiting for you with your son, and we'll have a good visit together. Okay.
Thank you.
All
Have
right.
a good day.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So this is just one of our role plays. I didn't end up in tears in this one because I'm not usually facilitating and role playing, or watching time, but Jody has brought me to tears many times. And what I didn't mention, I should have, is that when you're going to be using role plays for any of these charts or any of the work between anybody, they can be very sensitive and bring up hard feelings too at the time. And it's so that we can practice being with emotions and feel more grounded in what we're going to do or how we can be there for each other. I know there's a lot of focus on helping foster parents being there for birth parents, but I think my partners, my foster parents would agree with me, the leadership that I work with and the local ones, that we get so much out of these relationships. When we open our hearts and our ideas and our minds, and in some cases even our doors, to the families that we're working with, and intentionally think about, I loved that word everybody used, intentionally think about how to create relationship for the children's sake. Things are easier for everybody. Visits get easier. So, just the court process gets easier when a family knows they have support. We've created so many teams around so many families that had positive outcomes that, it's just obvious that the missing piece here is relationships. So that is chart number 2. Chart number 2 will give you ideas for communication. It will incorporate the information sharing that older children and parents need, but be really mindful about trying things a little bit differently, just a little bit. Try it with one case, try it with a role play with maybe a foster parent who isn't understanding what birth parents are going through. So okay, that is, I don't know if anybody else, Jody, did you want to say anything else? Yes, I want to ask you how that role play was for you. I almost walked right over that. I'm sorry, hon. You talk a little bit about this role play and how you feel about chart number 2.
So the role plays are not rehearsed. And so I chose not to really even see like the stage being set until in the moment. But that hit home for me, that I started to like really feel that, because that was a scenario that played out during my case with my own children, except I never had anybody come up to me and ask me, hey, what's going on? And the truth really is that I didn't have money for gas and that I did run out of gas every week. And I did spend my week picking up change off the ground to see whatever I could manage to put in my gas tank, you know? And so I found myself really getting emotional, but I find it so healing to be able to go back into a situation that I actually lived through and needed that support with, and to be able to have that. I think at some point I wasn't really role playing as I felt like it was happening, you know? And it felt good to have somebody ask, like, hey, what's going on? Let's work this out, you know? And I found Mama Bear a little defensive in some places when you said, Robin, I'm leaving and I'm taking your child. I was like, you know, but you really held this strong boundary, which I think is good. And you opened a door for me to be able to say that to somebody. Somebody noticed and somebody cared. And you didn't let that third visit happen where my visits got canceled. And so for me, it was that opportunity to go back and let a piece of me heal from my past.
That's pretty amazing, Jody. I'm thinking about a blend of all sorts of cases like this that have happened in my experience. But in this particular role play, what I noticed is the piece that was added that wouldn't have been there normally was the social worker saying, sure, you can talk a little bit at the end of the meeting. And that was a simple thing. And I was given the trust and respect and to work with Jody and be there with her as well. So it may take just a little bit of change to start and try on these relationships to really make a big difference for families. So I think I forgot to read when I was talking about the tools, but you can do this for yourself when you look at the tools, the names of the 4 charts. So chart 1 was building the relationship, about the initial relationships starting from the beginning. And then building on that, supporting the relationship talks about the different ways that we can have birth and caregiver relationships be set up in a way that there's good communication, and it changes. So it goes up and down. We definitely have a roller coaster in each of these charts. But now we're going to talk about the 3rd chart, which focuses on keeping the relationship strong while working with the system and planning for reunification. And this particular chart was important to me because as a foster parent, I wasn't always allowed to do this kind of support. So little by little, the county where I work really is open to this partnership, and they allow us to really share, here's how it was for me, here's what's going to work, and maybe I can go sit at court with you. And it really changed the whole mindset of everybody involved, and it shifted the case towards reunification. So I'm going to turn this chart over back to you, Paula, and once again, I'm not really sure what you're going to share, but wait, are we there for you yet? Are you chart number 3? Yeah, nod your head, Paula. Okay, I couldn't tell if you were frozen or not. Sorry, I was just wondering if you were frozen. So you're going to share a little bit about maybe one of the strategies from the tool or something that you've used in this area of supporting families through the navigation of the system. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Robin. Well, my actual experience, as I stated before, I was a kinship placement, and my experience was nothing like what we are trying to get across and to share with you all. And actually, as a kinship placement, I knew the family. So we already had relationship, but the caseworker in our case didn't like the birth family at all, period. And so what I felt like she was doing was sabotaging the relationship. Like she would tell the birth mother, like, your child is never going to come home with you. But I never agreed to keep the child. Listen, I already had child welfare involvement. Didn't I want them in my life? Not another moment. And so why in the world would I agree to taking this child on until he aged out of care? But anyway, and I told them that at the beginning, but she was telling the birth parents, you know, you'll never get your child again. That child is going to forever be with Paula. And the birth mother would tell the son that I had in care, which caused a lot of friction in my home. And then it caused a lot of friction between the birth mother and I. I never was really involved with the birth father. He was a little odd. And so I just, chose to deal with him with kid gloves. but the mother and I did have a relationship. And so it caused a lot of friction, and it caused that tension. And actually it caused tension between the child who was in my home and my birth children. It was a lot of stuff that we had to deal with because the caseworker chose not to follow any of these principles. Maybe she was not aware. That's the whole goal here, is we're trying to make people aware, because in keeping that relationship strong, it says while working with the system and planning for reunification. So we should always plan for reunification if it is safe to do so. And when you do that, then you don't exclude, you don't isolate, you don't put that as a part of your relationship. And so that was like error number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 1,000. Okay. And so what I did though, is when I found out what was going on with the caseworker, is I had a conversation and I said, listen, I don't want this child. I love this child, but I do not want to care for this child for the remainder of his life. If his parents can get it together, this child deserves to go home, period. She didn't like it. I started going to court with the birth mother, because like I said, the father didn't really do it. I started going to court with the birth mother. And when the judge would say, does anyone have anything to say? I would say, yes, sir. You know, mom came to every visit. Mom did this. I'm like the cheerleader for mom, because mom, to my knowledge, was doing absolutely everything she knew to do in order to get her child back in her home. That's what we have. That's what this partnership is about, is you become a support system. There was nothing like when I was a younger kid and to see my mom on the sidelines yelling and cheering for me. And I did the very same thing for my children, even turned roundoffs because I still can at 47. So you always need that support. And that's what we're trying to get across here, is that this is not a separate thing. Birth parent is separate from adopted parents or foster parents or kinship parents. We're all in this thing together, and we have to work it like we're all in it together. And so I actually used these tools before I knew what these tools were. And now that we have written information on these tools, we can expound on them and we can continue to use them. And I promise you, if you use these tools in every case that you have, whether you be a foster parent, a caseworker, and I don't know if there are any birth parents on here, but if everybody would use these tools, we would see a change in that child welfare system. And Robin, you mentioned change. We have to be ready for change. We can't ask permission for change. So some foster parents, where they're still trying to seclude the foster parent from the birth parent, you may have to figure out a creative way to follow the rules, but to implement this change. Because I don't ever want to tell anyone to break the rules, because it can be very detrimental to the case. So what we're talking about here is keeping the relationship strong while continuing to work with the system and a plan for reunification. That's where everybody in this family is working toward reunification. I'm going to pass it back to you, Robin. I think I'm done.
Thank you. And you're long from done. There's going to be a lot of workshops for Paula and these other amazing people, and our disruptor, Sharonda and Katie. We are all members of the BFPP, and we are looking anywhere and everywhere that we can share this work. And thank you, Paula, for pointing out the positives of what's going on here. And we are, I think a lot of folks are in a place where they are changing what's expected from foster parents to be a part of the family. And it is a change, but I do believe that those of you who are here today have a lot of power to really help that change, because some of it is just a mindset change. A culture change requires a mindset change. And that's something we can all do. So I'm excited to be part of the work that you're doing, Paula and Marquita. And we are probably running out of time. Let's move to chart number 4. As a foster parent, I love this chart, and it's something we talk about. I often hear, oh, if you have a relationship with the family, then you can babysit afterwards. It is so, there is so much more to it than that story. It's so much more for, because these families become my family. I become their family. We connect in a way that is the way humans connect, and it's through your heart, and it's about love. And those are uncomfortable things for folks in the system to talk about. So I'm gonna turn this over now to Marquita to talk about a really wonderful system, sorry, I looked away, a really wonderful story, which I believe our stories are the most powerful anyway, about when she did work on keeping the relationship strong after the birth family left. So Marquita, why don't you go ahead? And then Jody, you'll finish up this section.
Okay, thanks, Robin. So one of the strategies listed in chart 4 for keeping the relationship strong is to let the birth parent know that you're available to them even after reunification. You can share with them that you'd like to keep in touch via phone and even swap pictures. So a few years ago, I got a call that the distraught grandfather of a kid placed in my home was picketing out front of our county courthouse. He was carrying this huge sign, hoping that the judge would grant him permission to have his grandson for Christmas. I wouldn't have been so concerned if he hadn't written the name of his grandson on the sign for everybody to see. Everyone I called said he had a right to be there. Well, I felt differently. His grandson could end up teased if a classmate or anyone else in the community saw his name on the sign. So, in retrospect, it's hard to believe that this child had been with me over 6 months, and I had never met the grandfather who was a potential placement. Had I been introduced to the concept of BFPP and trained on the tools, this scenario may have never happened, or I would have felt less nervous approaching him. So scared, nervous, and not knowing what to do, I grabbed my coat, my purse, and a roll of duct tape on my way out the door. I was on a mission. I dashed across the parking lot trying to spot him, not even knowing what he looked like. I walked up to him and verified his name, introduced myself, and let him know that I was concerned that his grandson's name was on the sign for all the community to see. He spoke a couple of sentences and invited me to come sit in a coffee shop around the corner out of the blustery cold. He talked, I listened. He laughed, I laughed. He cried and showed me pictures for 2.5 hours. All he needed was someone to listen, a shoulder, an ear. Well, he realized that his picketing wasn't in the best interest of his grandson, so he decided to leave. He was so embarrassed to even carry the sign with his grandson's name on it back to his car. So I surprised him when I reached in my purse and I pulled out a roll of duct tape, which was the exact width to cover his grandson's name. We laughed and he said, "Miss King, you did what even my wife couldn't do. Talk me off the corner." He had planned on picketing for a week in extremely cold weather. Folks, families are desperate to get their kids back, and children are aching to go home. Well, his grandson was reunified with him 3 years ago, but we still keep in touch. Actually, the child contacted me weekend before last to let me know that his dad had remarried, and he proudly gave a tear-jerking toast at the reception. He even texted me the toast that he had so proudly written and sent me several pictures of the wedding. I got to boost his ego with praise on how handsome he looked in his fine suit. His grandfather has also invited our family to go on vacation with them in the mountains in the near future. It was heartwarming for him to invite us to travel with them. That's just how close we became. And using the tools, it affirms that these types of warm, intimate relationships can be formed and they can last for years to come. Jody, over to you for a quote.
Yeah, so I want to say, Marquita, I love when you share that story because, it just really highlights for me how sometimes we can perceive something, kind of like me being late to visits, or you looking out and seeing this man that appears so angry, and how easy those things are to see and judge. But then when we take that step and we actually humanize people, how that just forms into just building these relationships. And I feel like that story that you just shared just really highlights the beauty that can happen when we just humanize each other, right? The way we would if it was our sister or a mother and we were exchanging our kids. It's all about those connections. And honestly, I'm going to end with saying that why partnerships are so important, regardless of outcomes, regardless of reunification, adoptions, guardianships, all of the outcomes out there, is that as long as it's safe, every child deserves to keep everybody in their life that they love. And with that, Robin, I will pass that back to you.
Thank you, Jody. That one moves me every time. I think we can move to the next slide. But I am here to tell you that my life has really been nothing but enhanced by the relationships I have. So that focus on relationship from the very beginning can change the whole outcome of a case and really help everybody on the team to have a better experience, even with the hard things we have to go through, and to make sure children are safe and they aren't being taken away from their families. So here are our resources. I only have a couple minutes. You can see the tools are available. I wouldn't go anywhere without mine. The executive summary is a nice way to share with other people or just throw on your supervisor's desk, etc. And then there's a flyer that promotes the tools, handouts with recommendations on how to use the relationship building guide. Here I want to point out that this guide does not cover some of the subjects you may want to share, but you can use the guide and be flexible and make it yours by saying, okay, we're going to talk about communication, but we're going to talk about culture and how it feels for you and your culture, and, you know, talk about race equity. You can add all of these things in. It's a very flexible tool. The handouts are separate. We're hoping that these videos will be available soon because we have videoed all of our workshops and the role plays. But I encourage you to go out and think of one little thing you can do outside of the box that really is going to make a difference to families everywhere, because it's just a little bit of perception, just giving that foster parent a minute, 10 minutes with Jody or your Jody in your area. It's going to change how people think, and it's going to change how they feel. And we're going to continue to build these relationships in a good way or not. So why not do it in a way that supports all of us? So these are, and here's another one of our amazing birth parent leaders, Shauna. So I won't read this, but in the tools, you will see a lot of quotes from birth parents, foster parents, kinship caregivers, and former foster youth. I think they're all former, just talking a little bit about how relationships work for them. So this is one of my amazing mentors, Shauna here, who's also talking a lot about her particular culture and works with QPI to really get the news out there and work on relationships. So we better keep moving because we're done, but I could talk about that forever. So I wanted to say, I'm sorry we don't have time for questions and answers, but any questions you have or comments or anybody you want to speak with or talk further with, you can get in touch with us with Sophia Santiana's email at the Alliance, so the Children's Trust Fund Alliance. And on that note, I really, really want to thank KC Family Programs, Quality Parenting Initiative, QPI, and the Children's Trust Fund Alliance for really making the birth and foster parent partnership possible, for giving us the chance to really do the work we know can make a difference, and to listen to us and to share our word and elevate our voice, because it's already making a difference. We used to talk about how this is going to be great in the future, and I'm here to say it's already happening. So I hope you get a chance to look at these tools, try them on. If they don't work at first, try them again, share with other people, start conversations. And I also want to thank all of you who came out today or didn't come out, who sat in front of your computers, but still gave us your time to think about how relationships can change the lives of people, and that you're working with, and the reason you're there and go every day to help children be safe and be in families. So I think that's it. I don't know if anybody else has a comment from my team. I'm sure I should thank my team, Sophia and our people in the back, and also Stacy. And Cashew, what happened is she attended one of our workshops. So if I may, I'm going to let you know, we have a fabulous workshop coming up in May on, I think it's Monday, May 23rd at 12 Pacific time. But what's different about this one is it's going to be all dads, where dads are going to present. Dads are going to talk about the tools. They're going to talk about what it's like to be a dad in the system. And these are more the leaders from our BFPP. So we hope you can join us. And I want to thank all my amazing presenters and all the support I got. And I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. But, you know, just think about what's that one little thing you can do? What's that small but important step you can take to work towards relationship building? So thank you very much. I think I'm turning it over to you, Stacy. Yep, there you are.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you to the rest of the panelists. We did see some activity in the chat about access to the guide, and so it is on the website and you have to download it. If you have any issues, you can just email Sophia directly, and we put that in the chat, as well as we'll post it on the website for everybody. And I did see a couple questions that we weren't able to get to, but please do feel free to reach out to BFPP folks directly. And then just a few closing reminders and we'll wrap up. The CEUs for day one of this conference will be emailed out to all attendees within a week of the conference. This conference will be recorded and posted on our website. If the presenter provided their PowerPoint presentation, we will also post that on our website. We do have a very brief evaluation, 5 or 6 questions when we close out of this Zoom that we highly encourage you to provide feedback to us. Any questions, email us at cashew@umn.edu. And then finally join us tomorrow for day 2, 1 to 4 p.m. Central Time. The registration link is also in the chat, and we will hear from 4 more presenters tomorrow to continue this conversation. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you to all of the presenters and panelists and attendees. We really appreciate it.